We just took a bathroom break here. We're back.
You're talking way too much.
Yeah, talking too much, but it's great because these things fly like crazy. You never realize how quick the time goes, and then when you look at the clock, you're like, holy shit!
Like wow, we've been talking a long time.
Yeah. It's really fun when it's intentional.
Yeah.
Nice. So part 2, have some cool questions here, and we'll go through them. We'll rifle them, and then if we sit on them, then we'll go through the follow up ones. But go through some questions where I think there's always these things that say, hey, there's these questions you should ask your dad before, quote unquote, it's too late. So I figured this could be a really cool medium for doing this.
So now we're in a bit of a historic documentation mode.
Yeah. Well, both are. Yeah.
I've been working on that project, at work, that history project.
Yeah.
Exactly for that reason.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah, to document. You want to keep it before you
and
don't have it.
Just yesterday, one of the people I interviewed for that, or we interviewed, passed away. And my first thought was, oh, thank God we did her interview because she's gone now. Yeah. And so, really important.
Yeah, and when you get to have this, it's just a really cool thing to go back and so question number 1. What is your favorite thing about your dad?
My dad was always kind of positive, cheerful. Sometimes he would get angry or upset, but not really very often. And he would get a little bit combative, but in a sort of funny way. We would make fun of him, but he was always friendly, and he could talk to anybody. My mother once said, and my mom was a librarian, so she was kind of quiet, and she said, if your father couldn't find anyone to talk to, he would just talk to a fence post. And that was so on. And, I really liked that. He had so many friends, and I like to think I picked up on that a bit. I remember one time I was up in Hudson visiting him, and we got up, said, Dad, what do you want to do today? It was just me and him, and it was after Mom died, so it was just him. And he said, let's go visit a few of my friends. And I said, okay. And I'm like, okay, where are we going to go? So we get in the truck. I'm driving, and he's not telling me. He just says, turn here, turn there. And what we did was we went to the cemetery. And as we're driving along, he's pointing at gravestones going, yeah, there's Bill, and there's, whatever. Because a lot of his buddies had passed away. Yeah. So we went and visited him.
That's hilarious. Was he pulling your leg? Was he doing it?
He was kind of pulling your leg, and he was really good at that. I like that about him too. So, yeah. And we like to... in the family, the Weigel side, we keep track of all his goofy sayings. We did that for Grandpa Candy, too. We wrote them all down, and my sister has a list of all these, funny little sayings he had. And sometimes I'll get in a text stream with Annie Hager, your cousin, and all we'll do is say Dick Weigel sayings. And, I'll say one, and then she'll say another. And I'll say another one, and she'll say another, and that'll go on for... It's pretty funny. Yeah.
So it sounds like one of your favorite things about Grandpa, about your dad, was his character and his ability to talk to anyone, and his goofy spirit as well, his lightheartedness. I caught up with a friend and colleague of yours, Jeff Francel, who shared one of his favorite experiences. I asked him what one of his favorite memories with you was, and he said back to me, you were actually in my favorite memory of your dad. He and I had loaded all the kids up in an old crappy TNC Suburban, and we're driving up the West Pasture Road and got 2 flat tires. It was a Labor Day and hot, and we all needed to be back at work. Your dad was so calm and collected, and we hiked you and the kids back a mile. Sorry, this is I'm reading French. It was Labor Day and hot, and we all needed to be back at work, but your dad was so calm and collected, and we hiked you kids a mile back to camp in the 100-plus weather. His positive attitude kept Emmy and Audrey and the Weigel kids in good spirits. Then we drove the 2 hours to Del Rio and got the tires fixed. Drove 2 hours back to Marnie, Emmy, and Audrey. Marnie, Emmy, and Audrey and I made it home after midnight. We didn't leave a disaster for someone else at TNC, and we all had fun through the whole experience. I credit your dad's positive attitude for that not turning into a nightmare. Do you remember that experience?
Yeah, well, it's like, okay, we're screwed, but why be mad about it, Just kind of deal with it and be positive and get things righted and do what you got to do. So, yeah.
And the same conversation I had with James King is he said, I asked, what is something, how is it that my dad has impacted those around him, both personally and professionally? And he said that your dad never sweats the small stuff. He always keeps a positive attitude and likes to keep things going. And then that's when he mentioned later on the bondola of you guys hanging out. So he sent that over, and he sent over the speech he gave at your anniversary at TNC as well.
Oh, yeah. I have a copy of that. That was a really nice speech. Yeah.
It's really awesome. So I was
he's really a good friend, and professionally as well as personally. We made a lot of trouble together. Good trouble.
He told me. Yeah. And Francel also said another really great thing about you, and I'm just trying to find through all these pieces of paper, but another one was, I asked Francel, how do you think my dad has impacted those around him, both personally and professionally? And he said, Jeff has positively mentored dozens of people in his career at TNC. He has many, many fans out there, whether they stuck with TNC or not. For all intents and purposes, Jeff is the institution of TNC in Texas. You could have said a number of other folks, which I'm not going to mention, but he outlasted them all and embodied the culture, mission, and actions of TNC's work in Texas over the years. So he said a lot of great things.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. And then, and I asked him as well, what is something people might not know about my dad that you think is important to share? And Francel said, your dad is a good friend. I would be friends with your dad if I worked at TNC or not. He's not a fair weather friend either. He's what I refer to as a foxhole friend, someone who will be there for you when the shit starts to go off and won't leave you there alone to fight all by yourself. And he said that's one of the highest compliments I could give to someone.
Thank you, buddy. I feel that way about him too.
Yeah, he's a great dude. So I think all of that just to say the same admirable qualities that you have of your dad, it seems that you've embodied them as well. And your friends are saying the same thing about you. Question number 2, what is your happiest memory of us?
Robert, I mean, I have to say the wonderful journey that led to your state soccer championship was such a fun ride. Mm-hmm. You guys had a great team. You were, you didn't have anybody who was like a great superstar. Mm-hmm. You all worked together, and it was so fun to see, and the way it worked, I felt like Mom and I felt like we were part of it because the parents were close, and Coach Fink was such a stoic asset. And that was such a fun ride. That was so cool. And then the second thing I would cite is all the times we've been hunting. Mm-hmm. It's just so, you mentioned this before, you get that primeval feeling, but you also get amazing camaraderie and connectivity with your son, with his friends, like, the Arnolds and Mr. Arnold too. Mm-hmm. It's just, you can't beat it. And I had that with my dad. And oh God, I can remember as a little kid, like 5, he would take me down to their hunting camp, which was in Wisconsin in that little town called Millston. And oh God, I would be so excited. And, I didn't go hunting then because in Wisconsin, you couldn't hunt till you were 12. So I would be there with my grandma all day, and I was like waiting for the hunters to come back in and see what they got. And, it just is such an experience. And getting to do that with you, Matt, and Katie, who eventually took it up.
After a couple of years.
Now she's turned into like the killer extraordinaire.
Yes.
That's just, but it's not about like you shot whatever animal. I mean, that's kind of cool too, but it's about being outdoors and experiencing, like you said it earlier, like that serenity, that feeling. So those are moments. And I think about I'm thinking about a picture of you out at Dolan when you were like, God, I don't know, 5 maybe, and you had that little blue vest. Remember that thing? And you're standing there on the side of Dolan Creek. We were probably throwing rocks or something. And I look at that picture and I think, oh God, that was fun. When you were little, we had a lot of fun out there. So really, you could say those themes are sports and nature. And you have participated in and excelled in both of those things. And I've been there with being able to experience it with you. And those are, I suppose I could throw in some Packer games too. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff. No, the Dolan Falls, I oftentimes refer as my favorite place on the planet, and how much it has impacted me. So yeah, I'm so grateful for you taking us all into nature and teaching us about the incredibleness of that place and the rest of Texas and the world. And
yeah, let's keep doing it.
Let's keep doing it. Yeah, I agree. And
I'm thinking how you took us to that national park in Portugal.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was fun too. Yeah. I mean, we didn't really get deep into nature. You and Mom went on a hike, but I still felt like I got to see a good part of the nature there. And I was amazed how much it looked like the Davis Mountains. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, there's lots of places we still need to go to and do that.
I agree. Excuse me. What was the first year of fatherhood like for you?
Well, you mean with number one, Matt? I remember, the day he was born and the day all of you guys were born. It's a pretty exhilarating moment to all of a sudden you're like, wow, there's this tiny human here. And we made him. Now what do we do?
Yeah, I guess you have to take him home now.
Yeah, I guess we have to take him home. We have to give him a name. And
that's a pretty crazy concept of
first kid parenting. Parents are probably a little overcautious and nervous and worried. And I'm sure you'll see this with Matt and Bonnie. But I used to say, little kids are made out of rubber for a reason, so they bounce. Because, they're always falling down, whatever, when they're toddlers or they're roughhousing. And and as you move on and, we had Katie, you sort of get you get more experienced, so it's less stressful in a way, even though now you got 2 of these little rugrats running around. And now we have 3. How did that happen?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exhilarating, and that just doesn't go away. That memory of that feeling.
How much did your life change on that day?
Oh my God, a lot. Yeah, it's like we're responsible for this little creature now. We better, I thought, okay, is it too early to start the Packer brainwashing? but I had already started that in the womb. And it worked. So, you know. Yeah, it's such an experience. I can't imagine not being a parent at some point. And, you know, there's lots of ways to experience that, even if I've seen it, you know, people who don't have kids of their own because maybe they can't, they have fertility issues or something, but they find other ways to, you know, they become a good aunt or a good uncle, or they become a good godparent, whatever. There's lots of ways
to coach as well,
or being a coach. Yeah, there's lots of ways to experience that.
Yeah, very cool.
And some of those are a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
than actually having kids.
Yeah, it's a pretty expensive commitment. Holy cow! And a cut to your freedom. I'm sure that it's a lifestyle.
You
change.
know, I was lucky enough that Mom was so amazing and self-reliant, and I look back and I think I could have probably done a better job helping out. But, you know, I was traveling a lot, so I was gone. I mean, I remember that time you broke your leg. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? Because you were only like 4.
Yeah.
And I was in Mexico.
Wow.
In some really remote ranch and this is back when, you know, cell phones were really primitive. So
you could play Snake on your Nokia.
I get out of the ranch and I called Mom and she goes, "Oh, Robert broke his leg." And I'm like, "Shit, I wasn't there. I'm sorry."
Is he okay?
Is he okay? Yeah. Is he dead?
Nope. All right, I'm gonna stay in Mexico.
No, it was. We're all blessed to have your mom doing what she does. So
of course, yeah, it's been great,
and we need to take care of her.
Of course,
even more so. So,
yeah, I think some of the best parenting that you and Mom did was taking us into nature at extremely young ages. So I think that is different from others. So at 3 weeks.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, we were like, okay, we have these munchkins now and we like to go out in nature. And it's like, we'd seen people who had kids and after that, they never went anywhere.
No.
We're like, fuck that. We're not doing that. We're going to drag these things along with us.
Yeah. When was Matt? When
as I recall, Matt was born April 5th.
Yeah.
And his first trip was Memorial Day. So he was like 2 months old.
Mm-hmm. Did I have him beat?
You were out there when you were like 2 weeks old.
It's ridiculous.
It was crazy.
That's so dangerous because the closest hospital or closest anything is like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah,
so
true that.
It's a commitment.
But we always remember, we had this friend, this guy I worked with, and he's still a friend. His name's Burl Armstrong. Mm-hmm. And he's a big, kind of burly, outgoing, fun guy. And I remember we're sitting, the kitchen at Dolan, and you come out that squeaky door and you go down those 3 steps. Burl is sitting on those steps and he's holding you. And your feet are here and your head is here. Mm-hmm. He's just kind of holding you. He's a big dude. So.
Yeah. So it just looked ridiculously funny.
Just looked ridiculously weird.
Just a tiny
Here's
spud.
This 2-week-old thing.
In the middle of the wilderness.
And then Katie, I can't remember exactly, but, you know, we hauled her out early too. So I say, why the hell not?
Yeah.
But you're right. Most people don't do that.
No, and they take a while, and they're overbearing on their kids for a long time.
They're helicopter parents, you know?
Yeah.
And then now I'm thinking about how we used to let you run around like, and you probably can't say this anymore these days, like wild Indians.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we'd run around.
And you and great. Katie would be running around the neighborhood barefoot. Mm-hmm. And you'd come back and your feet would be black on the bottom.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
No, so
I'm so glad we did that. because, you got to let kids run wild and free. Parents just don't do that anymore. And it's not good for them. And I mean, I remember hearing on the radio about this book that came out. Somebody wrote, I think it was called The Anxiety Generation. You might have heard of it. And, talking about how kids, maybe your generation, maybe younger, I'm not sure, but how there's so much anxiety and, all that. And I can't help but think part of the reason for that is they don't get outside. They don't get connected with nature. They don't have free play.
Yeah.
Everything is supervised, managed, controlled by adults. And you just can't do that. No. And, research that came out from the pandemic really amplified the concept that nature has measurable psychological benefits. And I mean, you got that. You're thinking like, well, duh.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But, that's more recognized now more than ever.
It's really good.
It's so important.
Yeah. I think it is crazy because there's so much supervision and so much protection that people want to have. And I had a conversation with a woman previously where we talked about, where I said one of the biggest things that I'm nervous of as a parent is the same thing of how I think I failed in part as a manager sometimes, is I was too protective of the people who I was with, because it's out of empathy and love, but I don't want to see that person getting hurt, or those people that I'm responsible for getting hurt. And so by doing that, that's a failure of that position of a manager, and in my case, and then a parent of someone else, where the best teacher is life, and then the inevitable challenge that life will throw at you. And so you need to step back and let your child, the way how I use it was a metaphor, is let your child burn their hand on the stove. Otherwise they'll never learn.
Yeah, they'll learn.
They'll learn that way. Yeah, they'll learn that way, and they'll know that's not the way to go. But
I think that's a valid comparison when you're comparing parenting with managing.
Yeah.
You got to let them fail. You got to let them learn on their own.
Even if you know that the path that they're walking is going to be a failure, and it's going to hurt their esteem. It's going to hurt their confidence.
Yeah.
But you know that the steps to them getting through that is what's going to make them.
I've seen that so many times at work.
Yeah.
Especially as I've gotten older and gotten wisdom. I think that's real. And you're watching some younger colleague, and they're trying to get from point A to point B on something, and you're watching and you're going, no, that's not the way to do it.
Yeah, and you can tell them all you want, but they won't.
I think it's better to let them
walk
because
into it.
What I like to say is there's lots of ways to get from point A to point B, and the way you get there might not be the same way someone else gets there.
Yeah.
So let them figure that out, and they may do it a different way than you would have, but as long as they got to point B, so what?
Yeah. And it's fantastic, because then that's what gives you the ultimate confidence of going past B and now going to C, and then all the letters in subsequent order from that, and then just using that as different stages in life, for example. And I think about that as I'm building this podcast and this channel, is that I will constantly ask folks for advice, or not constantly, but I'll ask folks for advice. But lately I've been stopping doing that, knowing that, okay, the best data source is going to be my own mistakes and my own trial. So knowing that I'm going to fail, then I need to just go out and make those mistakes and fail. And so yeah, for parent and a manager, you need to do the same, and you got to just step back and observe them, which is tough. It's really tough, because you care about that person, and seeing pain in them is challenging.
Did I already mention the Yogi Berra-ism?
Which one?
So you know who Yogi Berra was, right? He was a catcher for the Yankees in the 50s, and back then the Yankees won the World Series every year. But he was famous for being this kind of idiot savant almost. He would make all these quotes that were at the same time really stupid and deeply profound.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites is you can observe a lot just by watching.
Yeah. Or another one that's really good by him is if there's a fork in the road, take it.
And he's a great philosopher of our time.
There's another one he said that I read last night that was, oh, it gets late early over there.
Yeah. And you think of that and you go, yeah, he's right.
he's got a point. It does get late pretty
Yeah,
early.
it's really good.
It is. So the next question is, what's the nicest thing that I've ever done for you?
Oh, man, that one's tough. Well, I could just kind of go philosophical and say you've been a great son, you've been a great, and I'm just going to say this, it's not sort of a direct thing like, you gave me a present or something, but you've made me proud of you. That's the best gift. You've made me proud so often, so many ways. You won the state soccer championship. Oh, my God. You have had the initiative to go out and tackle the world. You moved to frickin' Lisbon, Portugal. You did your stint at Bounce. You're taking on this new challenge. All those make me proud of you. And that's probably the best gift that a child can give their parent is for them to see their kid, succeeding in the world and pursuing their dreams, which makes me happy and proud. So that's probably the best gift you could give me. But, you could always give me some actual shit, like a new deer rifle or... I don't need a new deer rifle.
Maybe some floor seats to the Spurs, something like that.
Yeah, that might work. That's funny you mentioned that because I was saying the other day we got to go to a Spurs game this year.
Yeah, we do.
We do. But it's super expensive, as you know, and you've been lucky. You've had times where you got invited or, friends or whatever. I want to go see Wemby.
Yeah, me too.
And we did go to a game last year. My colleague, Lauren, and her husband invited us, and they were decent seats, but Wemby didn't play that night. They rested him.
So
it's like, what the hell?
You should get some money back.
Yeah,
that's the case.
I want a refund.
This horse shit. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll get you a Spurs seat next time.
Good.
What little things do you enjoy now most in life?
I enjoy every day, no matter where I am or what I'm doing, trying to experience some serenity of nature. And I feel that's so important. And even if it's only 5 minutes, sitting on the back porch, drinking coffee and listening to the birds and just connecting or, going for a walk down in the nature trails or going out for a weekend to Dolan. I mean, that just remains so important. And I like to experience that with people, with family, with friends, but I also really enjoy doing it solitary. I like to spend a few minutes just by myself, sitting quietly, like out in the brush at Dolan. If somebody ever found me, they'd go, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, what's this guy doing here? It's like, I'm just hanging out. I'm taking it all in.
Yeah, and I just kind of enjoy that. So that's one thing. And another thing is trying to remain connected to friends and colleagues, which gets harder as you get older because people retire or in some cases they pass away, like this person I told you about yesterday. She was a a friend, and we fought some conservation battles together. So you better do it now while they're still around, you know? So I try to make sure I do that. And the other thing I have is a rule of when in doubt, just do it. So if we're like, oh, well, I see, so-and-so is playing down at Sam's Burger Joint next month. Well, let's go.
Yeah.
Don't not go. Let's go. Yeah. So, we've seen more live music in the last, since my stroke than we've gone to a bunch of concerts. That was kind of a wake-up call of sorts. And it's led me to, what's that thing? YOLO. You only live once, so go do it. Which is why I'm going to the Packers-Lions game in November.
Yeah. How much did that shift your perspective and your approach to life, the stroke? And then,
totally did. It's like a giant wake-up call.
Yeah.
And, I know this will sound weird, but in a weird sort of way, I actually enjoyed that whole experience. Because I learned a lot and I improved my health because I got on a better diet, lost weight, and there really was never any pain involved. People will ask you that. They go, well, didn't it hurt? And no, it didn't. It just sort of happened. And it's like, what the hell? My leg doesn't work.
Yeah.
But no, there was never pain. And I had so many wonderful caregivers, the nurses, the doctors, the physical therapists and I really couldn't have told you what physical therapy really was until I actually had to do it. And that to me was a positive journey that I value. And so oddly enough, I don't see having a stroke as having been a totally negative experience. Mm-hmm. It was just an experience and helped me learn and grow. So what the hell? Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing it. But.
No, I think that's something else I think is what other folks have observed from talking about you, and I've asked about you, and then other observations from me and myself, which is your ability to move on past these things that would be stressful or would be intense. And another component of it is when I've seen you as a public speaker. I think you're one of the best public speakers I've ever witnessed, and then your ability to handle high pressure situations in which you need to deliver a speech, and then, well, you don't need to, it's just you choose to be able to deliver a speech. And the two most high pressure situations that I've seen you deliver a speech at were at the funerals of your mom and your dad. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, how is that something that you've built, or is that something that you have always had? But how are you able to relax and not let the pressure of a situation overtake you?
Well, some people might say I'm too relaxed.
The haters will.
Yeah, the haters will. But, it's some of that is, I guess, natural, but some of it's learned as well. I've benefited from a lot of training that TNC provided on public speaking, and I've also learned more and more the value of storytelling. And people tell me I'm a good storyteller, and storytelling is the best way to, pitch the Nature Conservancy to a donor or whatever. And a lot of people make the mistake. They think, they got to have like some PowerPoint thing that's 30 slides long and it has all this verbiage and all that. And it's like, no. They go with the facts and figures. Well, the Blackline Prairie is 98% plowed up and we've only protected 1.2%, and they start throwing out all these numbers and people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah, they're hard to follow.
And so you have to avoid that. And then I developed a rule of, I call it the rule of threes. And I'm sure other people have thought of this and use it, but I think it's most effective when you, and I did this for those funeral talks. I sat and thought, okay, what are 3 points I want to make? Not 5, not 10, because that's too many. You can't keep track of it and people will tune you out. So just pick 3 and do a good job with those 3. And I did that for both those speeches. I wrote that down, what are those 3 things? But I didn't write the speech out or anything. And, I enjoy it. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. I mean, like really afraid. They get all anxious and paranoid, but no, I get nervous. I think if you don't get nervous beforehand, you're not going to deliver. Mm-hmm. So that nervous energy actually helps you. I remember when I was in high school, this is sort of related, on the swim team, and how a swim meet goes, there's the order of events. And I swam the 200 freestyle, which was the second event. So I got to go out and race early on in the meet, but then I had to wait till my next event, which was the 500. And it was a pretty long wait because that's the second to last event. And I would lay in the locker room on those concrete benches you see at pools. And one symptom of nervous energy for me was I would fall asleep.
It's really interesting.
And yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive.
Like instead of pacing around the locker room or something, I would lay on the bench and just close my eyes, and sure as shit, I'd fall asleep. Somebody have to wake me up, say, "Hey, your event's coming up."
Yeah, get up. That's crazy.
So anyway, I don't know. Maybe that's a symptom of being too relaxed. I don't know, but it actually worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it's staying present and then never overthinking.
I think that's a real disease, overthinking.
Yeah.
People get so wrapped up in overanalyzing stuff, and you're like, no, you don't need to do that. Let's just stick to the big points here.
Yeah. I think I tend to overanalyze at times.
Well, I would say you do sometimes. Yeah. I've seen that in you, and I would guess that as you continue through life, you'll do less and less of that. Yeah. You'll be more confident, like with these podcasts. And it's been interesting to watch you setting up, like all the little details you had to do. Mm-hmm. And you had to learn that. I mean, you just started this like 2 months ago. So you're learning the technology part of it, the interviewing part, and you're learning, and you'll continue to learn, and you'll get better and better, and it will seem more natural. Here's another one. It's a sports one, but you'll hear announcers talk about quarterbacks, and they'll talk about the really veteran ones, and they'll say they have really good field vision. Mm-hmm. You've heard that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's so true. And I think of Peyton Manning in that regard, because he'd do his drop back and be scanning the field and going through his, and you could tell the guy just could instantly see the entire field and evaluate and then make his decision. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a thing in life too. You develop better field vision. You narrow down the decisions and you make good decisions, and all the clutter kind of fades away.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, the more and more you go, the further. Now you don't obsess with one particular place on the field, you can see the grand picture of it, and you can see all the things that come into play. And so I think overthinking also probably comes from the opposite of an abundance mindset, where you get so fixated on one thing that you think that this could, this doesn't work out here, then that's the end all of everything. But if you realize that, hey, there's multiple different paths, like you said, to get to B. This is a different context of the use of it. But when you realize that there's, hey, it's going to take a couple different directions to get there. And I've got one more question for you before we wrap up. What's one thing you want me to remember after you're gone?
Well, there's more than one. So how do I boil it down to one? You have to remember to be loyal to the Packers.
Yep, I knew you were going to say that.
No, gosh, that's hard. Remember to don't take people for granted. Always assume good intent. This is more than one, but kind of rules to live by. Put yourself in their shoes and talk less and listen more. How's that?
That's really good. It's really good.
I've been trying to get better at that, because I know I can tend to dominate certain conversations, and talk less, listen more works really well with donors. That's kind of a rule of fundraising, is they don't want to hear your stories unless you're talking about, the conservation project. But I mean your sort of personal stories, like you want to hear their stories. Let them talk, because they will provide you with clues as to what they really want to be supporting or be interested in, or what their situation is. And you have to listen to get that. So there you go.
That's great advice for a podcast as well. You need to be, especially with this format, is that if this isn't interview based, is that the whole aspect is, I remember talking with my editor who I've teamed up with, and we both have a similar philosophy of how podcasts should really be oriented, which I can express my opinion, and I should express my opinion a lot, but the main value that gets derived from this is giving the person who I invite on the best opportunity to communicate their story as possible. And so
you're doing a good job of that, Robert, by thorough preparation. You're thinking about the questions, you're interviewing friends and colleagues. That's super important. And you did a really thorough job on that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
But if you believed any of that bullshit that came from John Pupkus or James King or Jeff Francel,
I'd be a fool. I'd be a fool. Amazing. Well, Dad, thank you so much for doing this. This is really fun. We'll have this forever now. And this is a gift for you to have. I think it's out of order, but this is...
Well, thank you so much. This will definitely get put into the archives. And it's been a great pleasure. Thank you, Robert.